let's go ahead and go to the Q&A. What are you guys interested in hearing from me? Yes, go for it.
I was curious if the idea's been kicked around, either to you or maybe you might have heard it. And of course, the Wheel of Time question about someone writing Travels of Jane Farshad.
So other Wheel of Time books. This is actually an excellent question. I believe it was the second time that I went to visit Harriet, so it would have been mid-2008, where we went to dinner and mid-2008, where we went to dinner and she talked about what Robert Jordan had planned for the rest of the series. There were some brief notes about a sequel trilogy involving a certain number of characters. He called them the Outriggers. I won't tell you which ones, just in case you haven't read the last book. It would give you spoilers, but you can find out online very easily. Also, the two prequel novels for which he'd signed contracts, and we talked them over. Now, the thing about this is, I had listened to a lot of interviews with Robert Jordan over the years, and I knew that he did not like the idea of other people writing in his world. He eventually agreed to let Harriet find someone to finish the series. But I don't know if any of you heard these interviews, but he'd say at times, you better hope that I finish my series, because if I don't, I'm going to order my hard drives to be bulldozed so that no one can ever write in my world. And so because of this, my feeling was, yes, I would do the ending. It needed to be done, but I would not want to write any other books in the world out of respect for him. That includes the prequels and the sequels, or anything like a Jane Farshad novel or an Arthur Hawkwing novel, or any of these sorts of things. And that was Harriet's impression as well. She just wanted to know what I felt about it. And so over the years, we both have said the same thing when people ask, which is, it's wonderful that in other series this happens, but for Robert Jordan, out of respect for him, we feel that no more books should be written. And I know that's kind of heartbreaking for some of you, but at the same time, we have to respect what he wanted, and he didn't want to see this series become something where, every year there's 3 more Wheel of Time books, 50 years from now, where being a Wheel of Time book has lost all meaning whatsoever. And so, out of respect for that, now it's not my decision at the end of the day. If Harriet changes her mind or gets the feeling, that he really would have liked this to happen, then she will see that it happens. But I will tell you, I've been against it from the beginning, and I don't think it will happen. Now, the film rights are owned by Universal, which Robert Jordan sold before he passed away. He also gave them video game rights, with a clause that they could create video games that were not that were new stories. And so, there is a chance you could see a Jane Farshad video game, or something like this, and it would be aligned with Robert Jordan's wishes for the series. And so I've kind of pushed those notes that direction and said, why don't you guys make an Age of Legends video game, or why don't you do the sequel series as a sequence of games, or as a film project, or something like that. Right now, I do think they're looking at trying to do a pilot for a television show based on the series, but I'm not sure exactly where that is. All right? Okay, any other questions? Yes, Steelheart himself. By the way, here you go. I promise people who dress up that they can have... Oh, I got to give you one of the good ones.
Oh, thank you.
So, that is a Steel Hunt code. Well done. Unless you didn't already get one, did you?
No.
Who got the ones from the employee, Kim? You got one, and you got one. They were fast. They told me those were gone in a heartbeat. So yes, all right.
My question's about Navani's notebook.
Yes.
It says Spren can be trapped in various cuts of gems.
Yes, they can. You did a good job translating.
Does the stone that Galavar gave Sveth before he died contain a Spren?
You could say that you were on the right track. Yeah, definitely. There is something going on there related to the creation of Fabrials and to Spren and gemstones.
Okay.
That's an excellent question.
That also answers my follow-up. So.
Okay. Very, very good question. Yes.
Nice.
The use of how you weaponize gateways in the Wheel of Time, is that sort of an outgrowth of Sanderson's third law? I thought that was...
Yes, the weaponized gateways. So when I picked up the Wheel of Time, there were a few kind of mandates I gave myself. I wanted to try not to design a large number of new weaves. I felt that the Wheel of Time magic system was very open-ended, and it would be too easy for me to just design a weave for every occasion. And instead, I wanted to take what had been created and push it a little further. This would be kind of one of my touches on the series. I wanted to write the series, the ending, as close to the way Robert Jordan would do it as possible, but within reason. There are certain things I just do differently, and magic systems are one of those. And so I said, I'm going to, for years, I've been planning actually to write a book series where I did some stuff with teleporting gateways like that, because I always imagined what would happen in the Wheel of Time. And I never wrote the book, so I'm like, that's just too similar to the Wheel of Time magic system. So when I was given the project, I'm like, I dug out all those notes. I'm like, here is everything I ever wanted to do with gateways while reading the books for 20 years as a kid. And I let myself really go crazy. In fact, I went to Harriet and team and said, I want one character that I don't have to worry about what Robert Jordan was doing with them. Someone who's a blank slate, that he has nothing in his notes about, that I can do whatever I want with. And they said, well, how about Androl, who he didn't have a single word of notes on him. He's one of the Ashaman. And I said, all right, I've got that character. And I kind of channeled all of my Sanderson-ness into Androl, which allowed me to be a little, not worry about it so much with the other characters, if that makes sense. It was another one of these kind of, these pressure valves to let me play with the magic system. So Androl became kind of my voice in the Wheel of Time. And in other areas, I tried to stay much closer to what Robert Jordan would have done. Though when you get into some things like the fights in Tel Aron Riod with Perrin, it really approaches the way I do action sequences more than the way Robert Jordan does. And this is just our different experiences. He was a soldier. He went to Vietnam. He'd actually been in combat. And if you read his combat scenes, things like where Matt and Karyan in Book 4, I believe it was, and things like this, maybe it was Book 5, you know, and this sort of stuff, like there's this sense of just shell-shocked confusion relating to battle that feels very authentic. My experience with war and fighting comes from kung fu movies. And while I do try to add an air of realism where I can, I also am a product of what I enjoy. And so you end up seeing action sequences done a little more my style. Those are one of the big differences in the books, I feel, between what Robert Jordan might have done and what I did. Yes?
What's your writing process like? Do you write in the morning?
Oh, good question.
And what do you do for writer's block?
What is my writing process like? And I repeat the questions just so the people in the back can hear them. My process is I get up at about noon. I'm not a writer, so that I can, you know, work a regular job, and I will write from about noon until 5. And then I will go play with my children and hang out with my wife until about 8 or 9. And then I go back to work, and I do the bulk of my really good writing from about 10 until 4. Really 10 until 2 is my good writing time every night. Those 4 hours. So the earlier 4 hours, you know, those are still good. They can be very good, but often I'll be doing a lot more email or things, being interrupted, my agent calling, stuff like that. And people leave me alone at 10 p.m., you know. No one's calling me at 1 a.m. except my editor, who keeps a similar schedule to me. But so that's my process, and I'm a very consistent writer. I don't actually write that quickly. I write consistently. I do it every day that I can, and I do a little bit more each day, and I just work on my books. And you had another question.
Writer's block.
Writer's block. What do I do about writer's block? Writer's block is one of those interesting things where every writer is very different, and the things causing their writer's block can be a whole host of different things. Some days it's just you're in a really bad mood, and you're just like sick, and it's just not working. And no matter what you do, it's not going to work. Other times it's because something is fundamentally broken in your story, and the back of your mind knows it, and so you can't push forward because you're like, I'm just compounding the problem, right? I know I need to be heading the other direction, and so writing this way is not going to get anything done. And it's really hard to kind of diagnose what might be causing someone's writer's block. I have learned to diagnose it for myself quite well. This is just through a lot of practice. And for me, the way I do a good job of diagnosing this is I write the scene anyway. If I'm feeling some sort of writer's block, I will write anyway for the day, just as I was going to. And then I will look at it the next day and decide if that just didn't work. If it doesn't work perpetually, you know, having written it and it still doesn't work, I will know that there's something wrong. Does that make sense? That about half the time I'll go the next day and be like, that actually worked real well. I was just in a weird mood. And I'll keep on going and everything's fine. Half the time I'll be like, no, that's just completely wrong, and continuing on will just perpetuate this problem. In that case, I have to decide whether I need to write the scene over again, from a different perspective. Often changing the viewpoint or the location will kind of jog me into going in the right way. Or the much more rare problem is where a character is kind of fundamentally broken, and I feel like I have to start over with that character, rip their scenes out, and do it again. That happens very rarely. I don't recommend it for most writers. Most writers I recommend, try it in a different setting. Try this scene from a different viewpoint. Try to have the opposite thing happen that happened, and the opposite decisions be made, and go with that way instead. Try some things like that. But you're going to have to try, each of you, if you're writers, individual answers to trying out what to do with writer's block. But the worst thing to do is just stare at the screen and then walk away, because the next day you're probably going to stare at that screen again and walk away again. But if you write it knowing that you can just set it aside if it doesn't work, often your subconscious will start working on that problem. And when you sit down the next day to write, you can set aside what you wrote before, but that your subconscious has now figured it out because you did it poorly once, and you'll know how to do it the right way. So, yes?
This is kind of a segue to that.
Yes.
So when you're writing these grand novels, how do you go forward? Do you go backwards?
How do I do it? I have to be moving forward. If I lose my momentum on a book, it can be very bad for the book, which is why I'm very hesitant to go back and rip out a character. I've done it before, but I'm very hesitant to do it. For me, I outline backward. I'm an outliner, so I'll start with what I want the goals of my book to be, what I want the feel of my book to be, the climax, the twists, the character moments, the really big, powerful scenes that make you stand up and cheer, or boo, as the case may be. I start with those scenes in mind, and I work and outline backward trying to earn those scenes, saying, what do I do to make this scene function, to make it work? And I build this outline, and then I write forward. And how do I keep going? It's habit. It's practice. Every day I've done this, and so I know, I keep track of how many words I normally do. I can keep track of whether I'm wasting too much time, answering my email or checking it over and over again or whatnot. I'll know, am I getting about 500 words an hour? If I'm not, I'm probably wasting too much time, and I need to look at what I'm doing, change the setting of where I'm writing, not the story, but go somewhere else. Or go, do something to shake it up and keep myself going. And different methods of motivation work for me, depending on the day, but it's just page by page, word by word, you have to keep going. And most I do a day, and you've done a full day's work, and you come out with 3,000 words, and if you write that every day, 5 days a week, you've got, 15,000 words a week? And 15,000 words a week is going to be, 60,000 a month? Which, your average novel's about 100 or 120, so that's a novel in 2 months. It doesn't usually go that well. But, what's that? No, that's just getting a first draft done. Drafting usually, my experience has been, for me, takes about an equal amount of time as writing the book does.
But you get it done first?
I get it done first, and then I draft. Everyone's process is different. So it may be different for you, but I finish a rough draft. But I don't have a rough draft to work on, but I don't really know what I need to do with the book. So I like to have that draft done. And sometimes my drafts are really fast. Sometimes they actually are done in the 2 months or the 3 months, like that. But then I'll spend 6 more months just shaping it and things like that. It just depends. If you guys are really interested in writing, I will point you toward 2 resources. I have a podcast called Writing Excuses. Which, if you don't do the podcast thing, some people are like, oh, I've never done a podcast. You just go in your browser and you push play, and it comes through your computer speakers. It's really not that complicated. They call them podcasts, but you don't have to download them. This is 15 minutes of writing advice every week that my friends and I do. You'll find it very useful. If you're wanting something more in-depth, a grad student filmed my university lectures on writing and posted them all online as part of a grad student project of theirs. They put it on a website called Write About Dragons, which he built as kind of a, you go there and it's like, hey, take the lessons, the online course. But this was all just a mock-up project for his class. And there's just all the links to all the lectures. You can watch 13 lectures, hour and a half long, of me talking about the writing process, including 2 or 3 lectures on agents and on contracts and on self-publishing and all of these sorts of things. So if you're really interested, go look those. That one's pretty hardcore though. It's university lecture. It can get kind of dry. Yeah. Okay, it's on YouTube under the user Write About Dragons. You can just find all the lectures by topic there. Yes. Yeah, no, that's you. Mm-hmm.
All right. Will we ever get like scenes from Renarin's point of view in the way of things?
Will you ever get scenes from Renarin's point of view? You can say it however you want. It's your book when you're reading it, but I say Renarin. You will eventually see more of Renarin, definitely. That there are things going on in the second book that you'll find very interesting if you're a Renarin fan. Yes, right here.
You mentioned video games earlier. I just wanted to know if there was any in works with your books.
Yes, video games. We are working on a Mistborn video game. I turned in a story to the video game makers. It's going to be an action-adventure RPG. The model I used for it that I said I'd really like if they could make it work was something along the lines of Infamous, which was one of my favorite games of recent years. And so we are working on that. 2015 is now when they're saying they're going to finish the game and then I'm going to write the dialogue. So they took my story, they're building the game, and once we know the actual how the game plays out, then I can insert dialogue. It takes place about 200 years after the rise of the Lord Ruler, so about 800 years before the book The Final Empire.
What consoles are they?
Cross-platform. Yeah.
Who's the developer?
The developer is a developer named Little Orbit.
The short story that you had in Armored,
Yes.
I think it said in the back that you were working on a novel with that person.
Yes, I was working on a novel with him.
Are we still going to see that? Or?
You know, the novel at the end of the day, I was not satisfied with.
Okay.
I wanted to try this. This was a story. I have a friend who's in the military, and I wanted to write a military science fiction book, but I don't have the military experience. And so together we co-authored this book, and I don't feel that the quality was high enough to release. This happens to me with lots of books. I throw away, I wouldn't say a large number, but, 1 out of 4 books that I'm working on, I will decide that the quality just isn't high enough. They're always my experimental books between other books. It's never something like, one time it's been one of my epics, but most of the time it's not. And so I'm still looking what to do with this. I've told him he's more than welcome to release it under his own name without my name. If he feels that the quality is high enough or he can revise it or things like that. The only other option would be to have me spend a lot of time revising all of it, and I just don't have the time to do that right now. So it was a really fun project to work on, and he's a great guy, but I'm not feeling that the book, I'm feeling I would release it and people would be like, oh, this is not as good as everything else. So,
Cool. All right.
Back here. We'll do both of you.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? I am rereading The Black Prism by Brent Weeks because I never read the sequel, and he just turned in the 3rd book, and I'm like, I need to keep up on this. So I'm rereading Black Prism. It's a great book. Black Prism is one of the best fantasy novels written in recent years. I really like it. So I want to read the sequel, which I hear is even better, and be ready for the 3rd one because he offered me an early copy. And I'm like, well, I better. Yeah, I know. I get all kinds of stuff. I got Pat Rothfuss's new book. I got that one way early. Stuff like that, yeah. So yes, I've already started writing Robin Hobb being like, hey, Robin. Because she's doing a new Fitz book. I don't know if you guys knew this, but I'm like, when can I get it? So it's one of the great perks in this is that I can get all my writer buddies to send me their books early. So I finished Mary Robinette Cole's new book a little bit before that. And then I read a book by a former student of mine, Jancy. It was called 1,000 Faces. Fantastic. It was about a teenage girl shapeshifter, her family shapeshifters, and they do industrial espionage. It's our world, and they'll go, take on someone's identity, sneak into the iPad development team and find out what the new iPad's going to have, and then sneak out and tell the competitors, stuff like that. It's really fun. So I'm hoping that book is published. So your question, and then we'll go over here to you.
I was wondering if you're planning on releasing other books from other worlds in your Cosmere that haven't been revealed yet. Do you hopefully plan on showing all of them or some others?
I intend to show the mainline. For those who aren't aware, all of my epic fantasy books are related. If you want to know if something is related, if it mentions Earth, it's not in the Cosmere. So that's kind of my way to keep them straight for myself. The Cosmere is not related to Earth, so any of the books that do, they're different. If it doesn't mention Earth, I probably will put it in the Cosmere. So far, everything that I've done, I have. So I outlined the main Cosmere sequence. In that is Dragonsteel and White Stand, which are books that I will someday write, and things like that. So there are plenty of places you haven't seen yet. But for right now, I'm going to stay focused on Stormlight Archive. That is my main project, with my side projects being, in between Stormlight books, I can either do Steelheart sequels, Arithmetis sequels, or Wax and Wane sequels. And you won't be seeing any novels that are not one of those four in the near future. Maybe the Alcatraz finale, now that I bought the rights back and can do things like that. But I'm not going to be doing other novels until I've finished off a few of these things. See, what you've got going with me is I put off Steelheart and Arithmetis so long that I finally wanted to release them, but it kind of has the unfortunate situation of now I have 3 first books out, Way of Kings, Arithmetis, and Steelheart, and that's a lot for one person to juggle. And so, yeah. So that'll be my project for the foreseeable future. First Stormlight arc is 5 books. Once that's done, I will consider that series at a point where I can stop for a while, like I stopped Mistborn after the first 3 books for a little while. So then we'll do some other things in there. Okay? Yes?
How do you come up with your book titles, and are they ever revised by like your agent for better marketability?
Oh, good question. How do I come up with my book titles? Poorly. I don't know. It's like, not that the titles are bad. Sometimes, it's just that I don't know how I come up with them. Like Words of Radiance took forever. And sometimes, like my original title for Words of Radiance was The Book of Endless Pages, which is named after the book that Shalon gets given at the end of The Way of Kings. It's a cool title. It's kind of philosophical. It's a book of knowledge that can never be answered. You're supposed to fill it with the knowledge you know, but it's endless because knowledge is endless. Great idea. But naming a 1,000-page fantasy novel The Book of Endless Pages turns out to make everyone laugh. And so, yes, we changed that for marketing reasons. It's not that my agent forced me to. It's that my editor snickered when I told him. That's usually a bad sign. Elantris was originally called The Spirit of Elantris, and my editor suggested the change to just Elantris. So things have been changed before. Alcatraz, the first book, was initially called Alcatraz Initiated. And the middle grade editor said, initiated is a word that might scare off young teens, or even younger, like because it was targeted at the youngest at 8 and 9 year olds. And so, though you can use words like that in the book, having it in the title felt like the wrong move in their opinion. I just trusted what they said, so we called it Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, which made them laugh. But in that case, you want the snickering when you say the title. So yes, it's a conversation. The thing you have to remember, though, in books is the nice thing. We, as writers, the rights are ours. I don't sell the book to Tor, even though we talk about it like that. I license it to them or to Random House. And they then take those rights and can publish an edition of the book. But I retain all copyrights. Everything's mine. And so at the end of the day, if they want to change the title to something I don't want, I always have the option to walk away, pay the advance back, and not do the contract if I didn't want to. Let's do 2 more questions. Wow. Okay. Okay. We'll do them really quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll do your questions and be done, but I'm going to answer fast.
Okay. Do you find it hard to juggle writing for youth versus adults?
Do I find it hard to juggle? Juggle, no. It is a different skill. It's something I've had to practice. I've wanted to do it from the beginning. That's why Alcatraz came so early in my career. But it is a different skill. I've found that teens, number one, they will put up with you meandering a lot less. I like some meandering in my epic fantasy books, but in teen, no meandering. You got to start and be strong from the get-go. Also, it seems to be that in teen, my instincts are that focusing in on 1 or 2 characters and really telling their story has a more powerful effect than telling a large cast of characters. It's just a different skill, but different people approach it in different ways. All right, number 2, right here.
Any updates on being Justin Bieber?
Oh, updates on being Justin Bieber. We will find out on Wednesday if I have to become Justin Bieber or not. For those who aren't aware, I have a bet with James Dashner, who writes the Maze Runner books. Whoever's books sells the least in the first week. And I hit number 1 on the Times list, so I'm feeling kind of confident. But his books sell a lot of copies too. Whoever loses has to become Justin Bieber. And our editor, we have the same editor, is choosing the pictures. We'll have to be Justin Bieber on all of our Facebook and things like that. So I will know on Wednesday. You were in the number 3, were you? No? You were. Okay.
Kind of related is,
Mm-hmm.
do you choose to write like Steelheart for young adults, or does it just happen?
No, I did make the choice to write Steelheart for young adults. It felt like a teen book to me, and it's really hard to define because Mistborn, which is shelved in adult and was intended as an adult book, it stars a 16-year-old girl, right? And I think it's the fact that you're balancing a lot of different viewpoints with a lot of different perspectives, and it has that epic fantasy sensibility for world building. Felt like it was shelved in adult, but at the same time, there are books like, by David Eddings, right? It's like, well, where would you shelve David Eddings today? Would you publish those as teen books? Because those are as teen as Percy Jackson is, but they have some of the epic fantasy world building. Who knows? So I will write them with an audience in mind, but I'll let the audiences decide who wants to read it. I feel like Steelheart, like in the UK, my editor there decided Steelheart was an adult book. He didn't feel it was a teen book, and in the UK, it is published by my main adult publisher, not by my teen publisher, who published The Arithmetist, and it's just in line with my other books. So this one really straddles that line quite a bit. All right, who is over here? You were? Okay, and then we'll end with you.
My question was about the landscapes you built in Way of Kings. They were so foreign and alien, but
Yes.
had a very beautiful feel. I'm curious where you draw inspiration. Like I especially felt, and I don't know if this is true or not.
Yes.
That a lot of them reminded me of the video game Morrowind.
Okay, I have played Morrowind, so it has one of the best visual styles of a game. My inspiration for it was actually the idea of the ice storms and what would a world be like if these hurricanes blew across the land, and that drove me toward the no soil. I actually looked at tidal pools as kind of my guide because the washing in of the waves and then pulling out of the waves felt like it would have a similar effect. And so you end up with this sort of tidal pool feel to a lot of the world. And that was my inspiration.
Yeah, me and my son share your books in common.
Uh-huh.
He's turned me on to
Awesome.
Elantris. He was saying there was a character that goes throughout the worlds of Elantris, Mistworld.
Boy.
Yes. The question is there a character? There is a character. There is a character. It's the same person. He is in Elantris near the end. Serene talks to an Elantrian that she gets to carry supplies into the city. That same character name and very similar description is someone who meets with Kelsier in the first Mistborn book, pretending to be a blind beggar. Then Kelsier gets information from. And that same person by name is in Warbreaker, the person who uses the dust to tell a story. And then in The Way of Kings, it is the King's Wit as the same person. So, yes, they are all the same person. There is a story going on behind the story. Now, I don't intend for the book to ever be about him until I do a book and I'm like, I will be up front. Does that make sense? So you don't have to read the books in order. I wanted to be make it very clear that these are cameos. These are fun things we're doing. It is not something you have to be aware of, and it won't ruin the book for you. But if you eventually want to read his story, I will tell his story, and it will weave all of the books together.
I burned through the book so fast, it's hard to pick up those
Yeah.
little things sometimes.
All right, I am going to do, let's see, what time do we have? I'm going to do I'll still do the very short second reading. I did more questions than I intended, but let me do a few announcements first, okay? I did pre-sign a bunch of copies of Steelheart, so if you need to run and get going, you can pick up one of those pre-signed and don't have to wait in line. Or if you bought your book here, they probably swap it for you. And so just know that if you've got an appointment to get to, we can take care of that. They do have my backstock. They kindly brought it up here. We'll set it on the chair. They've got a bunch of my paperbacks here. If you want to pick these up, I'm happy to sign them for you when you come through the line, and then you can buy them up front. So just be aware we've got all those there. I do like to thank the bookstore for having me. Let's give them a round of applause. I know it can sometimes be cheaper to find your books online, but online bookstores don't do this for me. They can't have me have this wonderful signing. They don't have to employ a CRM like this to have these wonderful events. And so I do like to thank the bookstore and remind you, if you bought your book somewhere else, consider next time you need a book coming here. Consider maybe picking something up from the cafe. Support the bookstore as a thank you for holding the event. You're perfectly all right to bring your books in from outside, but do keep them in mind. If there's something you want, you were thinking of getting, pick it up here to thank the bookstore so they continue to be able to provide these wonderful events. If there are people with young children, who are disabled or elderly, that waiting in line would be hard for you, please come to the front. I had someone who was 92 waiting in one of my lines for 2 hours and made me feel very bad. And so just go ahead and do that. I'm going to do this reading in a second, but first, if you haven't posted your books, I prefer them posted with the name you want in them. If there's no posted, I'll just sign the book. You don't have to have a name. It's okay. But this is so that I can talk to you and not have to focus on the books. And if they each have a name in them, and the place to put it is inside the front cover on this flap right here, so that I can open the book, write it there, and sign. And this allows me to talk to you, answer your questions, and things like this without being focused. Don't put it across, by the way, right here, because if you do, when you fold it, this page, when you close it, this page will fold. Just put it actually on this. Does that make sense? The Post-it will sticky and make this page fold. And if it's a paperback, it's not as big a deal. You can put it on that opposite page. You can just put it on the cover of the paperback if you want to. But that just helps me keep moving and things like this. If you would like pictures taken, you don't have to. You are welcome to. Please just go ahead and arrange with someone to take the picture already by the time you get up here. While I start signing, come around to the side of me, have the person you've arranged to have take the picture count to 3, and I will look up and we'll smile. It'll be great. And then I will get to signing. What I want to avoid is, there's sometimes we do our whole conversation and everything's great, and then like, oh, I want a picture. And then we sit here and everybody in line waits for like 2 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot when you're signing 100 books. That adds like 2 hours to have them get arranged. You get the camera out, and then it's on video, and then they take a video of us both going and things like this. So just have that ready for me. It'd be really appreciated. And the other thing is, I will personalize through the line. The first time I'll personalize 3 books for you, up to. And sign the rest. If you want everything personalized, you're welcome to go back through the line, and the second time through, I'll personalize anything you want me to. But keeping it to 3 personalizations means if you come up with a stack of 12 books, again, for the people in line behind you, that will move the line along a little more quickly. So either pick 3 or go through the line twice. Does that make sense?